Now let's talk about Gideon's favourite topic, free speech. This week, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg was attacked far and wide for just meeting with conservatives. Today, Zuckerberg responded by saying his platform would be committed to free expression as consistent with American values. The Wall Street Journal reports that his comments are likely to inflame critics, mostly from the left, who have argued the company should do more to prevent the spread of misinformation as the 2020 presidential campaign roars into top gear. Gideon, I mean, when they talk about misinformation, they're actually just talking about conservatives having a platform.
They're talking about anything that will cause people to vote for Trump.
That's it.
No matter how reputable and well-resourced it is. Look, I agree with Mark Zuckerberg on this. Of course I agree with Mark Zuckerberg on this. But, you know, don't forget that a little while ago, he was calling for the regulation of the internet to weed out, as he called it, harmful content, whatever that means, and election integrity. As I said, anything that would ruin the integrity of election by getting people to vote for a conservative. So here's what Mark Zuckerberg had to say in March. He said, I believe we need a more active role for governments and regulators. By updating the rules for the internet, we can preserve what's best about it, freedom of expression, while also protecting society from broader harms. I'm sorry, that is talking out of both sides of your mouth. You cannot. You either have all free speech or you have none of it. Mark Zuckerberg, you know, great that he's moving in the right direction now, but it's too little too late. And
you're either a publisher or you're not. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And a lot of those social media platforms are very confused about what precisely they are. Now, Daisy, you would know, being on YouTube and having quite an audience there, just what a hard time conservatives can have with having your content demonetised or just prevented from reaching a wider audience.
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare, and I live in fear of my channel being demonetised, and we all do now, particularly after what happened in Christchurch. There was this strange crackdown we noticed on channels. So every single video now that I upload has to be manually reviewed by someone at YouTube to make sure it is suitable for all advertisers. I mean, it could be the most banal thing, you know, but everything. I could make a video about puppies and it would go up and it would have to be reviewed. And what YouTube has now, they introduced a whole lot of new terms into their kind of advertiser-friendly agreements, including something they've called borderline content, and by that they mean anything that could possibly turn anyone towards a kind of white supremacist, you know, state of mind. And I use the cringy air quotes because, one, borderline content can mean anything they want it to mean, and white supremacist means anything that's not a kind of globalist left-wing values channel. There's a channel by a guy named James Alsop who says stuff that I don't think is controversial at all, but he's a Trump supporter and he's a nationalist, and he's not particularly fond of Islam. He says quite mainstream stuff, but his whole channel with hundreds of thousands of subscribers got demonetized, so that's all of his income gone because he was deemed borderline content for reciting facts. So this Mark Zuckerberg can, as you say, can talk all he wants about free speech, but this isn't anything to do with him. This is because he sees the writing on the wall in terms of the regulators who are coming after him now, and all these calls by Trump, but also people like Elizabeth Warren to break up Facebook into tiny little parts because they just buy out all the competition, which makes for a not very free market. So sorry, Zuckerberg, but I'm not quite taking this at face value.
Oh, yeah, I think there'll be a lot who are with you, who do not trust these big social media platforms or the people running them.
People having the power to express themselves at scale is a new kind of force in the world. It is a fifth estate alongside the other power structures in our society. And, you know, people no longer have to rely on traditional gatekeepers in politics or media to make their voices heard, and that has important consequences. And I understand the concerns that people have about how tech platforms have centralized power. But I actually believe that the much bigger story is how much these platforms have decentralized power by putting it directly into people's hands. It's part of this amazing expansion of voice that we've experienced through law and culture and now technology as well.
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. Mark Zuckerberg was at Georgetown University yesterday defending Facebook's light touch on policing its political content. Here's what he had to say.
We are at another crossroads. We can either continue to stand for free expression, understanding its messiness, but believing that the long journey towards greater progress requires confronting ideas that challenge us. Or we can decide that the cost is simply too great. And I'm here today because I believe that we must continue to stand for free expression.
Okay, joining us right now to discuss this and more, Joanne Littman, Distinguished Journalism Fellow at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton and a CNBC contributor. Also, Megan Morris is here, Senior Financial Reporter at Business Insider. I'm going to start with the Distinguished Fellow. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
There's been a lot of critique of this. You go on Twitter, I don't know if you call them trolls or not, but people were sort of unhappy with this speech. Were you happy with this speech?
I was not on Twitter, but I will tell you, I actually think the speech was dangerous.
Dangerous?
I do. He was really making a lot of false equivalencies here. He was saying we need free expression versus, say, China, which censors free expression. But it was a false equivalency because what he was talking about, he was making reference to Martin Luther King and the importance of free speech, to Vietnam War protests. But the issue we have is that Facebook has come out and said that we will not fact-check political ads, which means we will allow politicians to lie, to spread misinformation, to spread hatred. That is very, very different than the free expression that allows political protests, right? There's nobody out there who is saying, in the United States, who is saying that we want to stifle free expression of political viewpoints. But what he's saying is we are going to allow lying and misinformation.
I think there's quite a few college campuses that stifle political viewpoints right now. What he said right there sounded awfully almost like a given to me. Now, maybe there were false equivalencies in what he was saying, and you pointed some of them out. But what he said right there, that was well written, and I wouldn't take issue with anything he said. Oh, it wasn't right there.
It's not what he said right there.
Okay.
It's what he said afterward.
And you would want to err on the side of, you know, we're all big boys and big girls, and you know, we can see things that we don't like, and we don't. I mean, the opposite is the echo chamber.
But Joe,
we're all living in our own worlds, only listening to things.
Twitter, and I went as you were
Twitter
to look at
cesspool.
Well, but here, look, he cited Martin Luther King. Right. Martin Luther King's daughter went on Twitter yesterday and said, I heard Mark Zuckerberg's free expression speech in which he referenced my father. I'd like to help Facebook better understand the challenges that MLK faced from disinformation campaigns launched by politicians. These campaigns created an atmosphere for his assassination.
Right. And that's my point, which is that what he is talking about is not free expression of political ideas. What it's doing is allowing sort of the hatred, the lies, that sort of misinformation that we were trying to crack down on in the 2016 election.
You don't think that someone yesterday used the horse left the barn or something? I use
toothpaste out of the
tube. Or
is the toothpaste out of the tube?
Already out of the tube.
Well, let's not forget that just a couple of years ago, back in 2016, Mark Zuckerberg was learning Mandarin, was thinking about entering the Chinese market, and the New York Times reported at the time even considering a tool for speech suppression, a tool that could be used by third parties to prohibit certain Facebook posts before they were even posted. So kind of going beyond just a moderating role for Facebook. So this is a calculated move at a certain point in time, but this has not been Facebook's MO for the last couple of years.
So he was willing to over in China to play.
Freedom of speech now, but when the markets indicated that might have been.
It sounds like the NBA.
One thing.
Yes,
I hear what you're saying. How do you go about doing it? I mean, this whole issue about fake news and people manipulating facts, and I'm not either pro or anti-Facebook, but how would they even go about doing what you'd propose, assuming that they were trying to sort of arbitrate what's fact and fiction?
I think this is a wonderful question, and Joe, I think you're getting to the heart of the real question about Facebook, which is, should Facebook be considered a publisher? If it is considered a publisher, it becomes responsible for the content and legally liable for the content that it publishes. Currently, it is not considered a publisher. It's considered more like
You'd like it to be a
wires.
publisher. That would solve the problem.
Well, I don't know that would...
Eunice just asked me, hey, you guys are talking about Facebook. What did you just say? We just went off.
We just went off the air. Really?
Because
of what you just said. That's interesting.
Why
but
is
it's
that?
fine.
CNBC went off because there are monitors
Because of what you were saying. But there's no problem over there. It's fine. It's great. It's great. That's what
My goal is to be
That's
moderated
what
at
Joanne
all
wants
times.
here. That's what she wants here.
That
So
is not
This
true
is a
at
longer
all.
debate. Please.
No one deserves to have that much money, right? I mean, that's not like, I don't, it's, you know, I think if you do something that's good, you get rewarded, but I do think some of these, some of the wealth that can be accumulated is unreasonable. And I mean, part of this is why my wife and I started the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, our philanthropy, and pledged that we're going to give 99% of our Facebook shares away through that over our lifetime. But look, I think some of this gets to a deeper question where I think there are people who would even say even that's bad, right? It's like there shouldn't be an accumulation of private wealth that allows people to, it's like we're funding science, for example, and it's like, and some people I think would say, well, is it fair that that a group of wealthy people get to some degree choose which science projects get worked on? And I don't know how to answer that exactly. I mean, at some level it's not fair, but it may be optimal in that it's like, or better than the alternative.
Mark Zuckerberg doubling down on Facebook's controversial decision not to fact-check Facebook ads from political candidates.
We think people should be able to see for themselves what politicians are saying.
At a carefully orchestrated event at Georgetown University, Zuckerberg used teleprompters to give a 35-minute speech on freedom of expression, revealing for the first time how close he came to banning political ads entirely.
I've considered whether we should stop allowing them altogether. From a business perspective, the controversy certainly is not worth the very small part of our business that they make up.
Last month, President Trump's campaign stirring up controversy for using the platform to share misinformation on Hunter Biden in Ukraine through a campaign ad. Now, the Biden campaign striking back on Zuckerberg's speech, saying his choice to cloak Facebook's policy in a feigned concern for free expression demonstrates how unprepared his company is for this unique moment in our history. After Zuckerberg invoked Martin Luther King Jr. for freedom of expression, Twitter lit up with this critique from the civil rights leader's daughter, Bernice King. I'd like to help Facebook better understand the challenges MLK faced from disinformation campaigns launched by politicians. These campaigns created an atmosphere for his assassination. The war of words comes as Republicans rail against Facebook for allegedly censoring conservative views.
Tech censorship.
Zuckerberg saying this to Dana Perino on Fox News.
Kamala Harris has said that she thinks that Twitter should shut down President Trump's account. Do you think that's a ridiculous idea?
In a democracy, I don't think that we want private companies censoring politicians in the news.